or have someone out with a synopsis of events. One thing to say at the beginning is just because I will forget, someone who remembers everything that's discussed at the hearing is confidential and stays within the room. So can you put that up there? And then at the end, when we're finished, you remind everyone, gentlemen, everything we've discussed is confidential. Please pass on your papers to us. Can you remember that?
Yeah. One more thing. Just a big thing. Do you want me to ask? Do you want me to say this question?
No, I'll do it.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So you're sort of
Pretty cool. That's great. Yeah.
so that one round.
I'm a semifinalist.
quiet down, please. Do we have any faculty announcements? Yeah, Mr. Lauer?
Gentlemen, real quick, if you've been in the science clinic, kind of on the side entrance, you'll notice that there's a blue bin that looks awfully like a recycling bin for paper, plastic, whatnot, but it does have signage that says e-recycling. We do actually have an e-recycling program here at Gilman, and you are welcome to bring in any electronics that you're finished with, old cell phones, old TVs, whatever it is. You can haul that in, and we've got a company that will recycle those. Just reminding you that you please use the paper bins for paper and plastic, and please keep the e-recycling bin for just electronic recycling. It'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other faculty announcements? Student announcements? Yeah, Eric?
This past weekend, the cross-country team went out to the Spike 2 Invitational at Stevenson University, and both the JV and varsity teams came up with a second-place finish. And the only team we lost to was St. Paul's, and today, at our own course, we started our dual meet invitational season against St. Paul's. So those who support for the team today.
Yeah, Mace?
Poetry Club Institute today, 5th period, CT 05.
Gus?
So multiple announcements. Bible study meets tomorrow, same time. Also, we're going to have Mr. Gilman as our guest speaker tomorrow for Bible study. And also, tomorrow at RPCS at 7:30 in the morning, there's a flagpole ceremony, flagpole prayer ceremony. So if we get a lot of Gilman students out there, that would be awesome. And lastly, water polo comes out at home today against the Hall. Come out there and support.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jewish Students Association, T314 today this period. So if you're Jewish, come out. Come support.
Yeah, Jeff?
Science Club is an interest meeting during lunch. That's a show. We'll get
Any other announcements? Alrighty.
He starts it.
So, gentlemen, this is our Honor Council Assembly to start the new year. I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you, having reflected upon last year, and maybe give you a couple of pieces of advice, and then we will follow with a mock hearing, as we did for you the year before, in an attempt to sort of demystify the whole process of how honor works at Gilman and what a hearing looks like. In reflecting upon 2017, we had 9 Honor Council hearings. Not every conversation that I have with students and advisors about honor results in a hearing. In fact, we had 24 conversations last year, and only 9 went to the committee. Of those, I think it's important to appreciate that 40% of the cases that went to committee involved cheating, 18% lying, and 32% plagiarism. If there's a positive about this, I can tell you that in all but one case, never did a boy break the honor code in a premeditated fashion. And so that's where my advice comes in. The vast majority of our cases that come to committee are due to poor time management and poor decisions made late at night when you have let things go right to the due date. And what I would strongly encourage you to do is manage your time better, look ahead, right? Don't put things off to the end. And if you're in a bind, recognize that the faculty here are reasonable, they want to help you. It is far better to ask for an extension, even with a penalty, than to make the decision to cheat or plagiarize, where the the implications of that decision are far graver. So I would encourage you to please recognize that we have faculty here who want to work with you and certainly want to encourage you to make good choices. The other bit of advice that I have for you that may seem obvious, but you know, lying, guys, is a dangerous downward spiral. And what I have found is that if you could really strive to be men of your word, these small white lies that then spin into webs to the point that you don't know where the truth actually exists tend to catch you up. So again, guys, I would just ask you to own your decisions and deal with consequences maturely. And if we do these two things, I suspect the honor committee may not meet at all this year, which would be a perfect outcome. So with that, we're going to hold a mock hearing for you. And if you have any questions, you might want to come ask me personally or any members of the committee, because now you'll have an opportunity to know the boys that you chose to run this committee.
Okay, so before we start, I just want to emphasize that it's important to know that everything we say in this meeting remains confidential, nothing leaves the room. And also, before we arrive to the meeting, we don't have any prior knowledge of the case, so it's all brand new to us. So the typical case is going to start off with Mr. Hudson giving us a synopsis of the offense, and he'll distribute the supporting evidence to the community.
So gentlemen, again, thanks for coming in at 7:30 in the morning. I know that you all have a lot on your plate in terms of school, athletics, and I always appreciate your commitment of time and service to this committee. Today we have a case of plagiarism. The student who's been brought to the committee is Sam Jeppy. The accusing teacher is Mrs. Knapp, and I have provided on the back of the packet for today's hearing examples of the work that Sam turned in on his own, and also the scholarly journal that Mrs. Knapp was able to find using JSTOR that would imply Sam did not properly cite or give credit where due. So with that, we will ask Mrs. Knapp to join us at this point.
So now Ms. Knapp, who brought the case to us, is going to give us her side of the story, and she'll tell us about how the case was identified, and tell us also about the student's immediate response, whether he admitted it, whether he denied it, or he felt any remorse.
Gentlemen, could we please introduce ourselves to Mrs. Knapp so she knows in what capacity you serve on the committee?
Mr. Hubeck, head of the upper school.
Matthew Moose, Senior. Michael Johnson, Senior.
Cole Brown, Senior. Mr. Hudson, Faculty Chair of the committee.
Mr. Rowell, Senior, former Chair.
Mr. Denosa, Faculty Representative of the Honor Committee.
E.G. Fonde, Junior.
Ely Sweet, Junior. Jackson Tackett, Sophomore.
John McGowan, Junior. Will Rende, Senior.
Roman Hines, Sophomore. Hubbard Bond, Senior.
Good morning, gentlemen. So for my senior elective, my students were writing an essay on John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. And when I was grading Sam's paper, I came across some language that kind of triggered something in my head, and there was a particular phrase in Sam's paper, and the phrase was play novelette. And I recognized it from some of my graduate work, and I did, once I recognized that, and I thought this seems a little strange or unusual, I went to JSTOR and quickly searched that phrase and came across a scholarly article by someone named Brian Leahy Doyle, and he writes about tragedy in Of Mice and Men. And so I saw this same language, and when I looked around that phrase, there was very similar language in that article as was in Sam's paper. And so obviously that was a problem for me. While Sam did in places use quotation marks, he did not cite properly or attribute Brian Leahy Doyle in his essay. When I spoke with Sam about this, the day after my discovery, he was immediately contrite and pointed to some time management issues and trying to finish things at the last minute. But it is still a concern for me as his English teacher.
So at this point, the committee is going to ask any questions we have for Ms. Knapp.
Yes, John.
Ms. Knapp, what exactly were the guidelines for the assignment? Were your students allowed to use outside sources or no?
They were allowed to use outside sources and encouraged to do so, and we talked about searching and as well as citing properly. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Rao.
How long had the class had to do this assignment?
A week and a half, and we had worked on a rough draft with peer editing as well along that way.
Mrs. Knapp, do you have a standard method of citation that you ask your students to use on papers like this?
I do, and we talk about MLA citation and using in-text citation, as well as works cited at the end of essays such as this, and we've been talking about that in the lead up to the due date.
How has he been doing in class, like up until this point?
He's doing very well. He's a really generally smart and responsible young man.
No further questions. So at this point, the accused student, Sam Jeppy, and his advisor, Mr. Ford, will
Thank you,
join the
Mrs.
meeting.
Knapp.
And after they enter, each of us will introduce ourselves again and explain our roles.
Sam, if you could sit at the end, and Mr. Ford sit next to him. Sam, we have had the opportunity to review the work that you submitted to Mrs. Knapp. We've also heard from her concerns with regard to improper citation and plagiarism. At this point, the members of the committee are going to introduce themselves so you know who's asking you questions and in what capacity. Feel free to answer as you're comfortable.
Mr. Hubeck, head of the upper school.
Matthew Moon, senior. Michael Johnson, senior.
Cole Brown, senior.
Mr. Hudson, faculty chair of the committee.
Mr. Owl, senior former chair.
Mr. Janoso, faculty representative of the honor committee. Ichi Bonde, junior. Louis Sweet, junior.
Jackson Taco, sophomore.
John Young, junior.
Will Rende, senior.
Roman Hines, sophomore. Pepper Bond, senior.
So next, Sam's going to be given an opportunity to explain his side of the story, and then the committee as a whole will ask questions that we might have for him in order to help us get a better understanding of the case.
As you all know, my name is Sam Jeppy. I'm a member of the class of 2018. The reason I'm before you today is because of a poor decision I made when I chose to plagiarize in Ms. Knapp's class. At the time, I was very stressed over my college applications that are due, many of which due in the near future. And to make things worse, I'd completely forgotten about the assignment, which was due the next morning. Because of this, I thought the fastest and easiest solution would be to copy an article I found online. I submitted the paper a few days later. Ms. Knapp confronted me and asked me if I had cheated, which I immediately admitted to. Looking back, I fully understand the seriousness of my offense, and I accept any punishment that this committee would like to give me after this hearing. Whatever the outcome, I promise that I will not make this mistake again. So thank you for listening.
Sam, have you ever been in a situation like this before? I mean, when you were an underclassman, and if so, what happened in, why were you able to resist, say, the temptation to do that in those past times and not this time? Was there something that made it seem like a plausible tactic to cheat?
I really have no excuse. I've been in situations like this before. Maybe it was the stress of college applications or something along those lines. Maybe I just wasn't thinking, but I made this mistake. I'm sorry for that.
Sam, what have you learned from this experience?
Well, I mean, for me, where I'm applying to college, I'm applying to Navy, and this offense could really have a big impact on my application. So something I've obviously learned is that these things do have their consequences, and in the future, I will never do anything like this again. It could jeopardize like a big decision such as college.
Sam, so you didn't just cut and paste. You found something that you wanted to use, and then you scrambled the language to make it look like it was yours. That took some time and some effort. Time and effort to cheat.
Yes, it did. It's something that I'm not proud of. I figured that this would be easier to do than to actually write the paper myself. I did cut and paste things and rearrange them, I didn't cite them properly. That's my mistake, and I won't do it again.
But you intended to not cite properly, right? I mean,
Well, yes, I
you
did.
wanted to pass it off as your own work.
I did.
Did you consider asking Mrs. Knapp for an extension on your paper so you could have a few extra days to work on it and not cite it misproperly?
I didn't. At this time, it was the night before. I thought it would look really, really, really bad if I asked her the night before for an extension. So I decided that I would try to cheat, and obviously that was the wrong decision, and I'm going to pay the consequences.
Any further questions from the committee for Sam? So at this point, Mr. Ford, could you provide us with a character reference for your advisee, please?
Yeah, so Sam has always held himself with honor. Very surprised at this offense. Really always turning in work on time. Does a great job in classes. Has a great relationship with all of his boys and his teachers. All of comments that teachers have made have always been stellar. So this came as a big surprise. He does great community service work and really carries himself with the Gilman 5 in mind, I think, especially honor. So this was a big surprise for everyone.
So since Mrs. Knapp brought this case to us and you and Sam and I had a private conversation, have you seen further contrition on his part?
Certainly. As he said in front of everyone today, he feels terrible about what's going on, and his poor decision at night, late at night, and got caught with college applications in this paper, and I think just feels absolutely terrible, and is honest that way. So.
Have you had the opportunity to speak with Sam's mother and father about this and the fact that he's before the committee today?
Yes, we have a great relationship, and they are equally surprised at his actions, thinking of him as the boy that we all kind of know. This is certainly not in character.
Gentlemen, any further questions for Mr. Ford? So, Sam, Mr. Ford, thank you for your time. Just to explain what will happen from this point forward is the committee will enter into deliberations, and we're going to look at similar cases. We're going to consult precedent, and we'll take a vote. And once we've decided what the proper course of action going forward is, I will reach out to you, Sam, through Mr. Ford, and Mr. Hubeck and I will see you in his office, hopefully later today. We don't want to drag this out.
Thank you.
So thank you again.
So at this point, Sam, Mr. Ford, and Mr. Hubeck will leave the room. And typically this is when we do our deliberations. That usually takes anywhere between 15 minutes, or sometimes it can take more than a day. It really varies case by case. So following deliberations, a student member of the honor board will be asked to make a motion of punishment, and then another student will second that motion, and then we'll vote. And I just want to emphasize that the punishment is decided by majority rules, so the vote does not have to be unanimous.
So having deliberated, gentlemen, I think we've sort of run this case through several times now. I think we have a sense of Sam and his contrition. Could someone make a motion for an appropriate punishment based on precedent, please? Nietzsche?
Based on precedent, as a senior plagiarizing for the first time, I think 2 days in school suspension with 2 essays, one on plagiarism and one on the importance of honor at Gilman, would be a good punishment.
Do I have a second from someone on the committee? So John, you second it? Gentlemen, can we put this to a vote? All those in favor of the punishment as put forward by Nietzsche, raise your hand. All those opposed? So the vote carries. At this point, we'll invite Mr. Hubeck in, and we will make a recommendation to Mr. Hubeck. Ultimately, he has the final decision. So, Mr. Mr. Hubeck, the committee has reached a decision, and Michael Johnson would like to present their decision to you.
Yes, based off precedent, Sam's status as a first-time offender, and his remorse, the committee recommends a 2-day in-school suspension supported by essays and counsel from committee members.
Good, thank you for your work. Essays will be done by, who's gonna give him the essays?
I'll give him the essay topics, and I'll also review the essays with him.
Okay, and then you and I will meet with him and Mr. Ford before too long.
Yes.
In my office. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for your time, your attention, and your commitment to the honor committee. It's a great thing to do.
And once again, everything in this room is confidential, so I'm gonna ask all you guys to turn your papers in.
If you pass the papers, we'll destroy them. Thank you. Gentlemen, thanks for your attention. Hope not to see you this year.
Let me add a couple things. Gentlemen, I think, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Hudson and Mr. Danessa for putting this together. You said there were how many did we have last?
9 hearings.
9 hearings last year. This is pretty much how it works, except obviously this is not, this is a mock scenario. Mr. Hudson's initial comments are really, really important, okay? Honesty, being forthright is really what we want you to do, okay? What Sam should have done, obviously, is to contact Ms. Knapp and ask for the extension. She could say no. She could say yes with a penalty. But certainly, those responses are going to be much better than this response here, okay? Again, to reiterate, your teachers are here to support you. They want to help you. It takes communication, and it takes some kind of trust, and that's what we hope that you do. These guys serve an incredible benefit to Gilman. These are young men that you have elected to represent you in a case of honor. They take it very seriously. It's not an easy thing to do, to sit in judgment of their peers. So I have the utmost respect for the work that they do and the amount of thought that goes into every decision that they make. It's not done haphazardly at all. I've been in committees with most of these guys. I think Mr. Tackle might be and Ellie might be ones I have not sat in committee with. And the questions are thoughtful. The attention is right on. And this is as important to the foundation of our school. And it's serious work, and you should thank them for their commitment to this. Do we have any more announcements before we leave? Okay, North.